Hello, all you Brontë-saurs and Eyre-Heads. Coming up on episode 20 of Sundays with Jane Eyre, Bertha and Jane. We'll be starting volume 3 with chapter 1, or chapter 27 of the novel, and our co-hosts will be our friends the Ghoul Guides, Dr. Lauren Nixon and Mary Going. Our story so far. Young Jane has survived an abusive childhood at the hands of the Reed family and the Lowood school where she was sent for being too rebellious. Her best friend at school, the saintly Helen Burns, dies at a very young age. When she turns 18, Jane is hired to be a governess at Thornfield to educate Mr. Rochester's ward, Adele. Jane is disappointed that Thornfield is not haunted, but she does hear a strange laugh coming from the attic. The housekeeper, Mrs. Fairfax, assures her it is just the servant Grace Poole. Jane meets Mr. Rochester. He falls off his horse. He is fascinated by her watercolor paintings, and they begin to have intimate conversations about their inner lives. One night, a mysterious fire breaks out in Rochester's bedroom. Jane rescues him by dousing the fire and him with water. Then they hold hands in his bedroom. The next day, Jane thinks Grace Poole has tried to murder him. Friends of Rochester come to Thornfield for an extended holiday, including Blanche Ingram, whom everyone believes is going to marry Rochester. Jane continues her inner battle over her love for Rochester as she watches him interact with the insufferable Blanche. The mysterious Mr. Mason arrives from the West Indies, and an old Romany woman arrives to tell the ladies fortunes. Jane hears her fortune, but it turns out that it was Rochester in disguise as the fortune teller all along. What? During the night, Jane is awakened by someone in the attic calling for help. Rochester brings Jane to the attic, and there she finds Mason wounded and bloody. Jane assumes that Grace Poole has tried to murder him. She helps Rochester attend to Mason, then they get him out of the house before any of the others awake. Jane is summoned back to her childhood home, Gateshead, by her dying Aunt Reed, and learns that her aunt had withheld from Jane a letter from an uncle wishing to make her the heir to his fortune, but Mrs. Reed told him that Jane was dead. Jane returns to Thornfield, and she and Rochester finally reveal their love for each other in the orchard at night. Jane utters the famous line, "I am no bird and no net ensnares me," and there is kissing. Yes, this is a kissing book. Kissing in the rain, too. Rochester proposes to Jane, or Jane proposes to Rochester. In any case, they agree to marry, but later that night there's a terrific storm and lightning destroys the great horse chestnut tree in the orchard. Rochester takes Jane shopping in what would be the worst rom-com shopping montage ever. A couple nights before the wedding, Jane has a nightmare and wakes to find a strange and scary woman in her bedroom who tears her wedding veil in half. Rochester tells her not to worry, just be on the safe side, sleep in another bed tonight. The wedding happens, but when the clergyman asks if anyone knows of any impediments to the union, a lawyer along with Mason stop the ceremony with news that Rochester is already married. Rochester admits it and reveals that he has been keeping his mad wife locked up on the 3rd floor of Thornfield with Grace Poole as her keeper. He takes them all to the room, wrestles with his wife Bertha, and then dares them all to judge him for secretly keeping his mad wife locked up in a windowless room in the attic. I think they can judge you, Edward. In Volume 3, Chapter 1, Rochester tells Jane the story of how he married Bertha and then offers Jane to run away with him and be his mistress. Jane declines and flees Thornfield. You don't want to miss the next exciting episode of Sundays with Jane Eyre from the Rosenbach.